button. Yes. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Sephardic World. We bring you weekly meetings about Sephardic history and genealogy. And we are quite successful at that. Also, thanks to our patrons who support us throughout our whole adventure. And a big welcome to our patrons and also to our viewers on YouTube. Today we have with us Raquel Levy-Toledano. She is a medical doctor and holds a PhD in biology. She founded the Genealogy des Juifs de Morocco, a Facebook group, only 2 years ago, and it already has more than 4,000 members. She is curator at Geni for Moroccan Genealogy, and she also is a co-administrator of the Avotainu Y chromosome project, one with Adam Brown and with Michael Waas. And she recently co-founded NAIMA, a genealogical society dedicated to Moroccan and Algerian Jews. And today she will speak about her own family and the difficulties she had in researching her family, a bit about sources, and she will also talk about DNA research. Welcome, Raquel, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tan, for the introduction. Thank you, David and Tan, for inviting me to your meeting. I will tell you about my own genealogical journey and how from the search of an ancestor born in Manchester, I was hooked to the genealogy of Moroccan Jews. Oops. So it all started by a single question. And the question was, did you know that our Levy great-grandfather was born in Manchester? This question was asked to me by my first cousin. And I didn't need more than that to excite my curiosity and to look for my great-grandfather. So the first thing I did is to question who was my own family, Levy family. And what I knew is that my grandfather, Nassim Levy, had two brothers, Abraham and Isaac Levy. Their mother was Mesoda Ohayon, and they were raised by my great uncle, Mesoda's brother, was Nassim Ohayon, which suggested to me that their father died at an early age. But I have no clue and no information about him. Yes, and all these people were born in Morocco, in Mogador. So who was I looking for? Nassim and Abraham had two sons, had each one their first son, their eldest son, named Meyer Levy. So I concluded that most probably my great-grandfather's first name was Meyer, as it was a tradition in Mogador to name the first son after the paternal grandfather and the second after the maternal grandfather. In general, we would name them after the death of the grandfather. Likewise, the eldest brother was Abraham Levy, so I suspected that the name of the father of this Meyer Levy was Abraham Levy. So I was looking for Meyer Levy, son of Abraham Levy, born in Manchester, and probably between 1845 and 1865, as Abraham, Nessim, and Isaac were born in a time frame, in a 10-year time frame between 1885 and 1895. So when I start looking and searching, I found a wealth of documentation in England that I could access with few click and an internet connection. I could look at censuses which would tell me how the family was composed, where they were living. There were plenty of directories, people, street, business directories that would help me follow the family life. I had access to journals, to several indexes, and in reality, in a very short amount of time, in a few months, I could trace the whole Levy, the life of the whole Levy family. My first encounter with Meyer Levy was in this 1861 census. And there was a Meyer, a boy of 8 years old, living with his father and mother, father named Abraham, so that fit with my hypothesis, and mother Rachel. They were living in Shitham, which is a Jewish neighborhood, which was a Jewish neighborhood in Manchester. And from this census, I could design the family tree with the whole family composition. So Rachel Wolfson married to Abraham Levy. They were both born in Prussia, as were Wolf, Joseph, and Benjamin, the three first boys. Jacob Levy, the brother of Meyer, the next brother to Meyer, was born in Manchester, and Meyer and all his younger siblings were also born in Manchester. So that told me that the Levy family came to England between 1849 and 1850. And this, it is known that there was an immigration of German and Prussian Jews between 1820, 1810 and 1840, 1850 in England. So that fits also with the origin of this family. With all the directories and all the documents I had access to, I could follow the social rise of the Levy family of Manchester. They moved from Furnace Street in 1861 to Derby Road, to Turner Street, and then York Street, which was called later on Shitham Hill Road, which looked like a main road. And that's where also the great synagogue, I guess the old great synagogue of Manchester, was built. From the business directory, I could also tell that from a salesman in 1861, Abraham became a fan dealer in the 70s with two business addresses, one in Turner Street and one in York Street. And then I could tell that he was probably a prominent figure of the Jewish community in Manchester, as he was the treasurer of the Manchester Hebrew congregation and member of several committees. I could also see from the different notices on the Jewish Chronicle that the family, Abraham and his son, made several donations to funds, social fund, school fund, cemetery funds, and to the Shitham Great Synagogue. There were also members of several of a social club. So this was a respectable and successful family, apparently. Looking also into the document, I saw that Meyer was working with his brother Joseph for their father, actually in this company, I guess, for their father Abraham. in 1879. So at that time, he was like 25, 26 years old. This company and the other actually was doing a lot of trading with Canada and South Africa. So apparently Meyer and his brother had a lot of occasion to travel and to travel far. And actually I found him as a passenger in several boats, going either to Canada, to South Africa, and so that showed that they were traveling a lot. His brother, Benjamin Levy, was the first mayor of Aliwal North in South Africa. This was found in the website of the Aliwal North Museum. And his brother Joseph, with whom he had a very strong business partnership, followed the path of Benjamin and became also a mayor of Aliwal North later. And actually, it looks like he played a role in the war in the 1800 war in South Africa, because I read a lot of articles mentioning Joseph Levy of Aliwal North. So what more about Meyer? Meyer Levy married Frances Mansfield in September 1886 in London. In the census, in the 1891 census, I found them living in Broughton. So I don't know if Broughton can be considered as Manchester, but it was very close from Shitham to Shitham. And there he lived with his wife Frances and with 3 children. In the 1995 directory, he is listed as a draper in Wellington Street, where, and that will be the address that he will keep until his death. One thing that surprised me in this census of 1891 is that he is recorded as a cotton merchant, but what we see here is that this is a foreign house. So this is quite intriguing. Is this where he lives that is a foreign house to him, or this was a question that I asked myself, but I started to have some clues and hint that probably Meyer Levy had another house elsewhere. So just to show that he was traveling a lot, this is a notice in the London Gazette when he dissolved the company and the partnership that he had with his brother Levy. And what it says here is that he was a partner with his brother in Aliwal North as well. So he probably has several occasions to go there. And again, this shows how often he could travel. So in 1901 census, there I found Frances Levy living in Rigby Street in Broughton. So note that she's not living in Wellington House. And what it says here, that she's living on her own means. The other information that was missing there is that Meyer was not living with her, but perhaps in the census, they record only the people that are present, because at that time, Meyer was not in a boarding house, but he was a boarder in a a surgeon house. And this was in Leigh, about 25 kilometers away from Manchester. So the question is, was he on his way to Manchester And that, did he get sick and then treated in this house, or did he come from Manchester to get treated there? But I believe that Manchester was a large city, and that there was no need to go to another city to get treated. But in any case, that's where he's recorded. And his death was registered also in Ley on April 10th, 1901. These are the notices published in the Jewish Chronicle by his mother alone. One was published in 1901 by Raquel Levy, announcing and actually thanking for the condolence and card that she received during the mourning of her son, Meyer Levy. And the other one was in the memory, after 1 year of the death of Meyer, on the memory of her son. It was published in 1902. And you will notice that there again, Frances is not mentioned. So I don't know what is the custom in England, but in France and in Morocco, when someone passes away, the whole family announce in a single notice the death of the person. And I try to find other notices, perhaps published by Frances about the death of Meyer, and I didn't find anything. So again, here, there was some indication that either Frances was not considered as part of the family, or perhaps it is the custom in England, I don't know. This is a notice that was published in the London Gazette 2 weeks after the death of Meyer. And here, what the notice says is that anyone that has any claim against the asset or the estate of Meyer Levy need to send and to make themselves known by writing by the lawyer of Frances, and that before June 24 or 26, 1901. So they gave like 2 months notice to people to make themselves known, as if Frances had some information about the fact that Meyer had perhaps a second family elsewhere, and that perhaps she knew that there probably be some inheritant that could claim about this, about the asset of Meyer Levy. I don't know, but that was the impression, considering all the other elements that I got from this. So, of course, I looked also at family trees, online family trees, and I found a family trees that was managed by the daughter of Anthony Myers, which was the grandson of Elena Levy, who was a sister of Meyer Levy. And she was extremely nice. We talked several times. I told her my story. She was very attentive to all the details, etc. She was not aware of a second family of Meyer Levy, and it was not something that could have happened in her family, or if that had happened, the family will never be aware of it, because the family was very religious. It was an Orthodox family. And if Meyer had a second family elsewhere, he would have never told his parents. So it was still plausible that Meyer Levy was my great-grandfather. What she told me also is that although her father, Anthony Myers, passed away a few years ago, she had tested him for DNA. And as soon as she told me that, I rushed into the internet, into the DNA company website. I bought a test, I tested myself, and a few weeks later, I looked at the test and I didn't match Anthony Myers. But I didn't give up. I tested also. I thought that with my a higher rank relative, Anthony Myers will probably match. Although it was very unlikely because he would have been my second cousin once removed, and then we should have some DNA match. But anyway, I tested them both. I tested my uncle. I looked if there was any match between Anthony and my uncle, and they didn't match. So I've just found a great grandfather, and I already lost him with the DNA test. So now, who was my great grandfather, probably named Meyer Levy and born most probably in Mogador? I looked everywhere. I looked at all the genealogical site. If I could find a Nassim Levy, son of Meyer Levy, or a Meyer Levy born that time in Mogador, I tried to look at document. I didn't find anything about him. But I've tested myself. I've tested my uncle Joseph Levy, and I tested also my late aunt Yvonne Zrian Ben Shetrit, who sadly passed away this summer, a month ago. And they're a surprise. They matches, and that was a strongly match between Joseph and Yvonne. I asked her, "Did you know that my mother was related to my father? Do you have any information about that?" And she told me no, in as much as my father was from Mogador, my mother was from Marrakech. So she barely heard that they had a vague family relationship, that they were vaguely related. But she didn't know how. And then I started to make her speak about the family. And then and the other thing is that we, by looking at the result, not only she strongly matched my uncle, but we had a common DNA segment, the three of us, which is called a triangulation, that clearly showed that the three of us had a common ancestor. This is it could be common in Morocco, but yet this was a quite large segment. So the ancestors should not be that far away. So I made her talk about the family, and something that I totally ignored is that her great-grandfather was Mimoun Levy. Mimoun Levy left Morocco circa 1900 for Brazil during the rubber boom, or late 1890. He never came back from Morocco. He left his wife and his children there, and we never had any news about him. Could this Mimoun Levy be the brother of Meyer Levy? No one in the family knew, at least no one of the living people in the family knew. And then that was the brick wall that was broken. By this document, I found a registry of the circumcision of Moël Judas Ben Daon. So I didn't find the registry. The registry was sent to me by Sidney Korkos, but I found 2 entries there. The first one is Abraham Levy. Second one is Nessim Levy. The date are the correct date. Abraham Levy was born in 1885. Nessim Levy, my grandfather, was born in 1881. And their father was Meyer Levy, so I was right about the first name. And what intrigued me is this name here, Levy Belfsahi. I looked into the registry then, and I saw that at least for the Levies, either they had a second name or they had a nickname. And so I found Levy Ben Hamou, Levy Nachmad, Levy Yuli, which is a very known family, Levy Korkos, which is people I know also who are from Mogador, and Belfsahi. It didn't sound that Manchesterian, I would say. I interrogated my aunts, my uncles from the Levy side. They've never heard about this Belfsahi. One aunt told me, yes, it sounds familiar, but I didn't know that that was our name. I also, this sounds like Arabic. So I also try to understand the meaning of this. Apparently, this means Belfsahi means something that is well dressed, that behaves well. So at least it was not a nickname that was meaning something bad. And from there, I looked into the register more than a little bit deeper, and I found not only Meyer Levy, but I found also Mimoun Levy Belfsahi, which could be my second great-grandfather from my maternal side. I found Simon Levy Belfsahi and David Levy, and all the entries of these people. So Salomon, Mesod, Abraham, Nessim, Abraham and Nessim being my grandfather, and Abraham his brother, but I've never heard that he had 2 other brothers. We have never heard about them. Then Mimoun had a son named Joseph Levy, again, someone that I'm not at all familiar with. I've never heard about him. Simon had 2 sons, Mesod and Nessim Levy, and David, Simon, Nessim, Aaron. And a last entry, another Meyer Levy, born in 1898, that I thought was the son of this Mesod Levy. So here I am with this family tree built from the registry. Remember, I've tested myself, I tested my aunt, and I tested my uncle. And by looking at all the DNA correspondence, I found that there was a person, Alain Semana, with whom we were not, or at least I didn't know that we had a family relationship. He strongly matched with my uncle Joseph, and he strongly matched with my aunt Yvonne. And moreover, there was a triangulated segment between the 3 of them of 30 centimorgan, which is quite large, which indicated that the 3 of them shared an ancestor. In his family tree, I could see that his great-grandfather was David Levy and that his grandfather was Mesod Levy. But from there, I could not, although it suggests that our family relationship was through the Levy, it didn't consisted into a proof. We just had some DNA matches until I posted in the Moroccan Jewish groups in Facebook that I was looking for anyone who knew about the name Levy Belfsahi. And by the way, Alain didn't know anything about the name Levy Belfsahi. Unfortunately, Alain's first cousin, who knew that I was researching the family, saw my post, and she phoned Alain and told him that that's how our family was called. And then I could make, this is, I would say, the second brick wall break. And I could tell from there that Meyer, Mimoun, and David were probably brothers, and that if I descended both from Meyer and Mimoun, my uncle Joseph, my aunt Yvonne, and Alain were descending one of each of them. So here I could make the link between them and show that the common ancestor was probably the father of Meyer, Mimoun, and David, that I called Levy Belfsahi, because as you can see, David has a son called Mesod, but there were several other brothers with a son called Mesod, so I suspect that his name was Mesod. Again, this doesn't look like very English, although I don't know. Perhaps it is also. It was also used in England. So I continue my search. Oh, and of course, that explained the triangulation between the three of them, and also the triangulation between me, Alain, and each of my uncle and aunt. So from there, I started to, I looked into my heritage and looked at all my cousins, all my relatives, and all the relatives of Alain, and that had been tested in my heritage, put them in the tree, and try to see what were the DNA correspondence. And what I found is that we all shared some DNA together, okay, which is not that uncommon among Moroccan Jews, but most importantly, we all triangulated together. Alain Semana was triangulated with my cousin Michael, with my other cousin here, and likewise, these cousins here triangulated with my aunt and with Alain, etc. So that was another proof by DNA. But with the help of the other element, genealogical element, that indeed Mesod Levy, whom I call Mesod Levy, was the ancestor of all these people. And actually today, we are like 500 fourth cousin that are listed in Geni. So I continue my search, and what I found, and I could confirm, is that indeed this Meyer Levy was the son of Mesod, that my grandfather had a sister named Esther Levy, whom son was named also Meyer. So again, I didn't need a proof that my great-grandfather was Meyer, but it is, we can see that all the firstborn were called Meyer here. The question that, and the other thing also, is that he died probably before 1898, because that Meyer was born in 1898, and we would have never named someone that is still alive. So this is probably after his death that he was named that way. So this means that my grandfather Nessim and his young son and his young brother were quite young when their father died, and that explained why they were raised by their uncle Nessim Ohayon. And perhaps that explains also why we never heard about this family, the other brothers and sisters of my grandfather. Although now that I know the descendant and I talk to them, they knew about us. So perhaps there were, I don't know, some family history. From the DNA, I also could tell that the Alain Semana was a descendant of Mesod Levy Belfsahi, and he also told me that his great aunt Raquel Levy married my great uncle Isaac Levy. So he knew about my great uncle, but he didn't know about the relationship between Isaac and Raquel, and actually they were first cousins. This also confirmed me the whole line of my grandmother, a maternal grandmother, with Aliyah being the daughter of Mimoun. And I learned then by a descendant of Yakot that Aliyah had also a twin sister named Yakot. I knew about my great-grandmother having a twin sister. Because we have a lot of twins running in the family. And so I've met this way also the descendant of Yakot Levy. So I could prove from the autosomal that, and I could find my Levy family with the autosomal DNA. Now, I tested my uncle, Joseph. So, of course, I was very curious to know about his, my patrilineal ancestral origin. And this is done by analyzing the Y chromosome that is transmitted from father to son. And by testing the Y chromosome, it allows us to know more about the origin, the ancestral origin, and the paternal lineage. So I tested my uncle at that time, and I made him join the Avotenu project. And from the Avotenu project, we could see that he distantly matched the Ashkenazi Levite branch, with a common ancestor, the most recent common ancestor being 1100 years, living 1100 years before present. So probably my Levy lineage, although it was an ancient Levy line, was not Ashkenazi, but most probably Sephardi. And then by looking at his Y DNA matches, I found one single DNA match. And this one single DNA match, his name was Juan Octavio Polo Wood, whose father was born, he's Peruvian, but his father was born not far from the Rio Marañón here, which give rise to the Amazon River. And from they didn't know who was his second grandfather, great grandfather, but he knew in the family. The story ran that his great grandfather was fathered by a European Jew. But actually, by looking at the shared most recent common ancestor with my uncle, this was probably 600 years before present. When I got this news, before I knew when they matched together, again, a whole new story pop out, because my great-grandfather Mimoun was living in Brazil, as I told you before, and one of his nephew also had left Morocco for Brazil. So here is a whole other story, but actually it turns out that Juan didn't match with any Moroccan Jew, so the link between us is probably further away. So what I learned and what I'd like to convey as a message from all the work I've done is that the power of DNA is very important, but it can be used as a tool only. And here it invalidated hypothetical family story. It also validated another family story. And with the help of the DNA today, without this help, I would have never known about my family. The other thing that I learned from this story is that there is a major lack of document in Moroccan Jewish genealogy, either because they don't exist or because they're not accessible. They are now in the archives of Moroccan Jewish communities where there is no one to take care of it, or because they have disappeared. Some people have heard that some registry have disappeared from Morocco and that they cannot be found anymore. So there is a great need for better organized research into Moroccan Jewish genealogy. Oh yes, and what is the most important thing that I need to say is that the family memory and the history is extremely important in genetic genealogy. And that's why I created this Facebook group called Genealogy des Juifs du Maroc about 2 years ago. And the aim here was to get people to make their own family tree and to put it in a common platform. Here, what the platform that we are working on is Jenny. Today we have 4,000 members in that group, and there are in Jenny, we have a single tree with at least 300,000 profiles, Moroccan Jewish profiles, all linked together. So in a way, we are achieving it is not yet achieved, but we are toward the goal that we set for ourselves, building a single Moroccan Jewish family to restore the link between these families and not to be lost again, because they are only based into our memories. Because I found everyone who had been tested for DNA know that we get thousands of genetic cousins, but I didn't have any clue on how I could be related to these people. And sometimes it's not like just few CM, but I can share more than 100 CM with some people, or 150 CM, and I don't know how I'm related to them. So I set up this group whose objective was to first help members understand their results of DNA test and identify and help them also to identify the connection between genetic cousins. So it's a smaller group, and it's true that I haven't worked too much on it these days. Then I got the opportunity to work with Adam Brown, with Michael Was and Wim Penix on Avotenu Online. on Avotenu DNA project, and I co-manage the Moroccan Jewish Y chromosome study on Avotenu. The objective here is to learn about the ancestral origins of Moroccan Jews, to determine their migration path, and I have tested at least, I know more than 100 people, Moroccan Jews, but probably 150 people, Moroccan Jews, who are in the project. And I've learned a great deal, although I have some genetic background. I didn't know anything about the Y chromosome, and I really learned a great deal with these people, and I thank them. Lately, and we founded a genealogical society called Najma for nos ancêtres juifs Marocains et Algériens. So Najma is a name, is the first female first name that was used 100 or 150 years ago. It also means star in Arabic. We founded this society with Jean-Marc Benamou, Nathaniel Farous, and Jacob Marash. The objective here is to gather as much people as we interested in Moroccan Jewish genealogy, gather document, share what we know with everyone that is interested in the subject, work on some research project, publish, and actually we are working on a book on the descendant of Rabbi Daniel Toledano, who arrived in Morocco from Saloniki in 1610. The whole work was done by Yaakov Tal Toledano, but it was published in Hebrew, and we want to give this work more visibility by publishing it. So that's thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed my talk and you found it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was incredible. Do you want to close your stop your screen share so then you can see? Brilliant. Thank you. Can I ask, because like a lot of people, I've taken an autosomal DNA test, but I've never done anything as anything close to as sophisticated as yourself. Were you just using sort of pen and paper, or is there software, or how did you?
I do both. When I analyze,
yeah,
I do both. There are My Heritage, there is, for people who pay a little bit more, a way of analyzing what we call the triangulation. Triangulated segments are segments that are transmitted by a single ancestor to several descendants. And that's helped me, because sharing DNA is not sufficient. You really need to do this. So that can be done in My Heritage, but also I did some, I downloaded the segment, look for who matches and on which segment, who share, how many people share the same segment, etc. Now I did quite a fair amount of work to do to find this.
Okay, I hope this isn't an indiscreet question, but isn't France quite strict on matters of DNA?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like in United States, it's not reinforced. Okay, it is not allowed, but yet there are several companies that sell DNA tests in France, as long as you don't do health DNA, research.
And sorry, finally, before I pass to Tom, can I ask a personal question, because you have Oheyon in your family, and I think it's quite a big family in
Yes.
Morocco. Indeed, I have a friend who belongs to that family. She's gone back to Israel now. I had always just assumed the family was sort of Berber and not Sephardic. How do you work out who is who, or is it just what people know, or is it not possible?
Yeah, it's from the name already, O or U or or Wa means Ben, son in Berber. Yeah. So already from the name you can have some indication, but actually there are a lot of Berber names, people with Berber names that I tested, and they turn out not necessarily to be what we call the Toshavim, which is Jews that came to Morocco like 2,000 years ago and didn't come from Spain. So names are quite recent. So it's difficult to tell from the name. Then from the Y chromosome, we can have an indication.
From the
DNA. Sorry. Is Belfsahi an Arabic name or?
So it is not a name, I guess. I think it is a nickname that was given to this family. So it's not too bad nickname, because, as I said, is something good, but it is a nickname that was given apparently to this family.
Someone in chat compares you to the great Sherlock for unraveling this family mystery. I can agree with that. A question: how does a Fendt merchant move on to cotton? Was that a question of socializing?
I guess Abraham, the father, stayed a Fendt merchant all his life, and the sons, probably by trading. You know that the cotton in the 18th century, in the 19th century, in the 1800, late 1800, was very precious, and there were found people in Europe, in North Africa, in the islands, were fond of the cotton from England.
Someone explains about Mogador. It's on the west coast of Morocco, facing the Atlantic, yes, and therefore an important port for cross-Atlantic trade.
Yes.
And it was also famous for being very British and very, very Victorian. Yeah. Did you manage to do some research in Mogador archives? I know you explained that there are not a lot of archives, but there must be something.
I don't know if there are still archives in Mogador, or if they have, if there are archives somewhere, they have been moved to Casablanca, because there is no more community there to take care of the archives.
Yes.
But I should just remind you that I've started this research only less than 3 years ago. Okay. So I didn't have time to go to places to look yet.
Let's hope.
Probably one
we
day.
hope that you have many years before you of fruitful research, and then you can come back to us. Are there any books about the Jews of Mogador?
We were talking earlier about Chaim Zafrani. Chaim Zafrani was born in Mogador, and I think that he had probably, with his knowledge of the Moroccan Jewish history, he has probably written, at least in his book, there might be a lot of indication on Mogador. but I cannot just think about a specific book on Mogador.
I think Sydney Kokos is writing a book on
Yes,
Mogador.
of course, Sydney is writing a book on Mogador. So let's wait until this book is published. We will learn a lot, I'm sure.
Someone asks about Y-DNA. Is there any M96 Y-DNA in the Moroccan group?
Yes.
It's a technical question to me.
Sorry,
M96.
I need to look. No. I thought I need to look at this.
Okay. And then there's a lot of praise in the chat for your talk. People loved it. Maybe there are some more questions on over on YouTube, David.
We have a comment from Harif, and I can send Harif if you want the Zoom link for future talks. Just saying that Sydney is writing a book on Mogador. Can I ask? I mean, it's very early days in terms of testing, and perhaps too early to build a hypothesis, but the sort of general simplistic assumption we have is that Jews left Spain to Morocco sort of earlier than heading off to the Ottoman Empire and Portugal. Can that be shown? Did that even happen? I mean, perhaps it was more of a shared culture between the sort of Maghreb and Spain, or I mean, and you were talking before about Sephardim and Toshavim and so forth. Is DNA just going to show us that everything we thought we know is wrong, or is it just too early to say?
Are we talking about Y-DNA, I guess?
Yes, because that's easier to...
You have to remember that we are analyzing only men. Women, we could with the mitochondrial DNA, but unfortunately, the variation of the mitochondrial DNA is much slower than men, so it's difficult to date or to have an idea on migration, etc. From the Y chromosome of Moroccan Jews, we have the confirmation that a lot, if not most of the Moroccan Jews came from Spain, and that what we also find is that the most largest families probably came from Spain, although there are some clusters also in Morocco. And these clusters are probably very old family, very migration directly from the Middle East, from the Holy Land to Morocco after the first, or most probably the second temple destruction, or with the Roman.
Can I make an observation?
Oh, here you are.
Hi.
So perhaps you can.
The interesting thing is, and Sasha Bader talked about this when he spoke about surnames 6 months ago. That is the number of people in Morocco who come from particular lineages is different than the distribution of lineages. In other words, there are many lineages that are small, and certain lineages that are from Spain that are large. So the percentage of male descent that comes from Spain is overrepresented. Exactly. Okay, there are many, many ancient small lineages that we're finding in Morocco. And to answer one question on everyone's mind, they bear very little relation to the lineages of the non-Jewish Moroccan community. That's also true of the Tunisian Jews and the Algerian Jews, that they're quite distinct. So I don't think I'm talking out of school, Raquel, if I mentioned the fact that we're not seeing a great deal of Berber influence in the paternal lineages among the men of Morocco.
Are men more mobile than women? I mean, you know, in terms of sort of genetics.
I think that's true of every population around the world. Yeah. That you see more mobile men marrying local women. Just about every community. It's certainly true among the Ashkenazim, and it's true Persia, Iraq, you know, all over. Seems to be the case. It's hard, as Raquel mentions, it's very hard to tell because the mitochondrial DNA doesn't have the specificity of the Y, so we can't quite tell. But it certainly appears that way, and we certainly, when we look at the Ashkenazim, we have far fewer female lineages than we have male lineages. And I imagine if we scrap one of these days, Raquel, we should take a look at the mitochondrial studies done, 10 years ago by Daron Bahar in Morocco to see how they compared to what we're learning about the male lineages. So, yes. But we haven't done that because we have focused on the new technology, which is the big Y, and the mitochondrial technology really hasn't advanced tremendously. So there wasn't a lot of value added for us to go into that, to duplicate what others have done. But no one's done next generation sequencing the way Raquel has in Morocco.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Raquel, because I've heard from various sources, and indeed you referenced it yourself, that there are a lot of records at the Bet Din in Casablanca. Would they ever consent to having some of these scanned, or I understand there may have been issues in the early 20th century that they just want to keep them private?
I offered to go to scan this, at least to Tanger, because in Tanger I know that there is also archives. I've tried to get in contact with the Moroccan community in Casablanca through different people. I was not successful so far, but yes, that would be one of the mission of our society, to go and to try to digitalize all the documents that are in the archives.
Yes. And presumably there must be quite a lot of records in Israel, both records that were taken and presumably when people arrived, the Central Zionists, whatever, must have made records of who people were and their parents and things like that. Yeah.
I'm not sure about if the Zionists in Israel, when the Jews arrived, if they recorded, they might have, but I don't know where it is, because when we look at all the lists that are accessible from Israel, there are no mention of the father and the mother. There is only the name of the person itself.
Okay.
And I don't know, only people who make trees, there is the beta at Sufot that has some genealogical information online that can be consulted, but I'm not sure that this information, when people arrived, I'm sure that they recorded the name of the parents, but I'm not sure that this is public and available. And remember, that's not a long time ago. And it's 60 years or 70 years ago at most. So they might not be available for these reasons.
Okay. Morocco was sort of under protectorates of the French and the Spanish, and then there was an international zone in Tangier and so forth. We know a lot about the French records, and the Genealogical Society in France has done a lot of work there. Do you know anything about the Spanish archives, and indeed for the international zone? I mean, are those archives in Morocco or somewhere else? Do you know?
I believe the archives were in the consulate, even in the Spanish zone. I don't think that there was kind of a central administration that will store any archives. And that's another thing that we'd like to do with our society, is to go to these consulates or to the archives of this consulate and to dig into these archives, because I believe that there we'll find plenty of information. By the way, you were mentioning Algeria and Morocco. Algeria was a French territory. So all the information and civil status were recorded the way it was in France, and it is available to anyone, and it is available online for Algeria. Morocco was a protectorate, and there was no obligation to do any kind of census or civil state record. So that's why we don't have much information.
I know that Jacob Marachi has been doing some digging. Going to the other end of the Mediterranean, that Ali Ergensoy and myself have been looking at the Ottoman Empire, and obviously there was a different system there, but Jews would often appear in Sharia court records. Might there be a similar situation in Morocco, or is that just a fantasy?
I don't know. I'm not aware of that.
Thank you.
Gina Marks says in chat that the Jewish Genealogical Library in London has several books on Mogador, including the one you mentioned from Bendahan, the circumcision registers. So there will be books about Mogador. And someone else says there may be something in the central archives of the Jewish people.
I don't know.
Sidney Korkos actually has joined us on YouTube. He's saying that the rabbinical archives of Mogador were taken to Brussels, but there's not much in terms of list of names, etc. And his book is nearing completion, so we look forward to that, and hopefully he can come back and talk to us again with that.
Yes. No more questions on YouTube?
No, I think we've rather gone over the time, so so we.
Okay, then let's wrap it up. Thank you, first of all, to Raquel for telling a lively story, and quite a detective story. And thank you to our patrons who support our work and make all of this possible. Thank you to our viewers over on YouTube. And we hope to see you all again next week, when we don't have a speaker yet, but there will be one. And goodbye to everyone for now. See you in a week.